I'll send you the link. I'll send you to this guy, two people in the link to my school reference. From there you can
Yeah.
or I think we can.
I can.
You sure?
Yeah.
Today we have Today we have Rohan Souza with us, long time friend of ALF. He's a Tai Chi teacher. He's a urban lake expert. He's conducted lake history walks. He's done a lot of research on urban areas. He's also a school teacher, college
Now
teacher.
I'm an educator, mostly I'm an educator.
He's an educator. He's an educator and
Very good at martial arts.
yeah. So he's going to talk about social movements and the martial arts today and over to Rohan for
Thanks, ALF for giving me this space. So hi everyone, I'm Rohan. As Vinay said, I'm an educator, I'm a freelance educator at this point, and I also teach martial arts. So I teach courses at different places. I teach courses at different places like University, history. I teach at a couple of schools also. Multiple things happen. We teach Tai Chi history. I teach at a couple of schools also. Multiple things happen. We teach Tai Chi classes. Earlier I used to teach combat-based martial arts, but now I don't take it. So yeah, that's my background. So the thing is, I'm interested in martial arts and I'm interested in social movements and all the dynamics that happen over there. Martial arts of late, there has been a subject called martial arts studies, which is a subset of culture studies, which looks at martial arts in sociological detail, which is the sociological context of martial art, what gives it its flavor, its history, historicity, and so on and so forth. So a lot of papers in that realm. So I've drawn from that and from some other sources as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on three social movements. The Black Panther Party in the US, Iyengar's Dalit movement. Just one second, I'll just say, yeah. Just give me a second. Sorry for the interruption. So these are three social movements that I'm going to focus on. Black Panther Party in the US, Iyengar's Dalit movement from Kerala, and the suffrage movement from UK. And in each of these, what interested me is, apart from what we've been doing in terms of social justice and so on, it's also the martial arts aspect in it. How has martial arts come into these different movements and to what end? How has it served the needs or requirements of these different movements? So that's what I'm going to focus on. Before I start talking about the movements, I just kind of try to contextualize what martial arts is, because martial arts itself is quite a vast universe, and to kind of narrow the definition down to make it useful for our purpose today in terms of understanding how martial arts fit into these movements. So I drew from a paper written by a couple of people in Prague. So they looked at how martial arts definitions and understanding of martial arts, how we define martial arts itself. So the paper has different categorizations of martial arts. So I just picked up three out of those. There are five major categories and some 5 minor. But I'm only looking at 3 categories for our purpose today. And these 3 are so they have categorized it under martial activities. That is the large umbrella. So martial arts is a subset of martial activities under their definition, and I'll explain what that means. So the 3 that I'm looking at are martial arts, warrior arts, and close combat. So martial arts, educational activities practiced for the purpose of improvement and fighting through acquiring martial skills, but also emphasizing self-development of character, skills, moral virtues, etc. And also there are certain moral principles, codes of conduct. There are some philosophical and spiritual underpinnings also to martial arts. So it's a more comprehensive learning. So that is one categorization which I'm going to use, and then I will tell you how I bring it into the different movements. That is one. The second is warrior arts. Again, there's not too much difference between these 3 categories, but we can look at them differently also. So warrior arts, it's mainly learning martial techniques for fighting purposes. So if you go back in time, historically soldiers in armies in the past, I'm talking about firearm time when you use weapons to fight. So you had warriors who were trained in particular fighting skills and they employed it in the battlefield. But also they had certain ethical codes which they followed. So that is the distinguishing factor. The warriors are not trained so much in philosophical ideas or religious or self-development purposes and all this. That's what differentiates the first from the second, the warrior. The third is close combat. So close combat is fairly straightforward. If you are going to be attacked on the street or something like that at a close range, how do you defend yourself? So certain martial arts, certain fighting styles will teach you only that. And the point is that people go to martial arts for various purposes. So these could be the purposes also. If I just want to defend myself, I'm just going to go to say a Krav Maga class, Israeli martial art, or Jiu-Jitsu, which I'm going to talk about, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So it's very basic. I just want to defend myself. I'm not bothered about anything else. But if I want to push it a little further, then maybe I will go for a martial arts class, which also brings in certain ethics, morals, spirituality, drawing from certain spiritual traditions, Buddhism, Taoism, and so on. So these are the three categories I'm going to look at, and I will apply them to the different movements. So that is where we are at. At any point, please feel free to stop me. This is not a lecture in that sense. If you have any questions, you can make it two-way also. Yeah. So with this as a context, we will go into the movements one by one. So this is Martin Luther King Jr. Now I found this quote very interesting. You can read through it. Why I put this up here is that because we usually associate Martin Luther King Jr. with non-violence, Gandhian approach and so on and so forth. But what he said over here is that violence exercised merely in self-defense, all societies from the most primitive to the most cultured and civilized accept as moral and legal. The principle of self-defense, even involving weapons and bloodshed, has never been condemned. When the Negro uses force in self-defense, he does not forfeit support. He may even win it by the courage and self-respect it reflects. When he seeks to initiate violence, he provokes questions about the necessity for it and inevitably is blamed for its consequences. It is unfortunately true that, however, the Negro acts, his struggles will not be free of violence initiated by his enemies, and he will need ample courage and willingness to sacrifice to defeat this manifestation of violence. So in a way, he's kind of saying that self-defense is perfectly justified. It's not that if someone comes and attacks you, especially an African American who is at the receiving end of police violence or any other violence, perfectly justified to defend yourself. So I just put this out there because there is an association that it's all about not non-violence and non-violent movement, which he was. But he also said that when the time is right and when you need to defend yourself with violence, you should. So I'm just putting it as setting the context for the Black Panther Party. I'll talk a little bit about each of the movements and then go into the martial arts aspect of it, just to set the background of each of those movements. So the Black Panther Party was formed in 1966 in California, primarily because of police violence and the way in which African Americans were being treated in the 60s and before that also. So at that point of time they said, no, this is the time where we kind of stand up and say enough and push back and use physical violence wherever required for defense and weapons also, guns. So that was one part of their movement. The other part was a lot of community-based service programs, which they call survival programs, food, clothing, transportation. There was that also happening in the background. So for them it is not just about knee-jerk reaction, but to transform society so that there is equality, there is social justice and so on. So it was a multifaceted kind of a movement, the Black Panther Party. I'll just show you one brief, one collage video. So just to put faces to the movement, some more pictures. So you see Angela Davis in this corner here. Then there are some of the others who were pioneers of the party. There were some glimpses into the activities of the party when it was started. So Huey Newton and Bobby Seale are the two young activists who are part of the civil rights movement, who are getting disillusioned with the nature of the civil rights movement, the way it was progressing. And they said that, okay, let's do something much more substantial in terms of one is to push back and say, no, we are not going to be pushovers for your violence. And the other is to also do the community-based work, educational activities, and multiple things. So these two are the ones who kind of started it off. They grew to 5,000 full-time party membership at one point of time, and at their peak they sold 250,000 papers, the Black Panther Party papers, every week. 90% of the African Americans at that point of time supported the party, and it led to a point where Edgar Hoover was the head of the FBI, described them as the number one threat to the internal security of the US. So this is something which is used in different contexts in different places. Even in India, we hear this term by the authorities. Number one, internal security threat. So, yeah. So this is again the context. So some other community work involved programs which were not necessarily self-defense, non-violent, or not violence-oriented. Free breakfast programs. So a lot of Indian states are doing this. Free lunches in schools and all that. They were the pioneers in that. Free breakfast programs and checkups for various diseases and so on and so forth. So there was a lot of community-based work also which they did, apart from what I'm going to get into. Yeah. So this person, David Hilliard, he wrote his autobiography recently, one of the senior Panther Party members. So he also said he was involved in the community-based programs mostly. But then he also said that he was not against fighting violence war. I'd like to fight. Fighting clarifies things, resolves problems that can't be put to rest in any other way. So it's as simple as if someone comes and punches you, you're not going to sit and talk with them. Right? The biological being will respond. So that is that. So from here we move into the martial arts context. And there are very specific martial arts that each of these movements took up, and for clear reasons also. So the martial arts that Black Panthers learned and practiced was a style derived from Taekwondo. Taekwondo is a Korean martial art. It was slightly modified, this style which they learned was slightly modified by this master Ken Yuan, and customized to make it applicable in streets, for street defense, fight in streets. So he called it Tiger Taekwondo. So Steve McCutcheon, who's in the photograph, he learned under Master Yun and he started taking it to the party members. So just to give a context of what Taekwondo is, I don't want to assume that everyone knows, all these different martial arts. So I just play videos which are representational of the styles, just to give a context. These are not necessarily them practicing, but just to say what Taekwondo is. So Taekwondo at this point in time is a martial sport more than anything else. So you have different categories like I was talking about. Martial sport is one aspect of it. So karate, Taekwondo, many of them are sports which have gone to the Olympics as well as a sport. They have their own federation and so on. Taekwondo has an interesting history. It is a very recent martial art. Most martial arts in most countries they claim that they are 5,000, 10,000, 10 billion years old. It's all crap. Most martial arts that we practice now, whether it comes from the East or anywhere else, is hardly 100, 150 years old. Like even Tai Chi, which I teach, now someone says that it's 5,000 years old. So the style which we practice now is barely about 100 years old. So that's the case with most martial arts, even the Eastern martial arts. But we like to put a layer on top of it saying that traditional, ancient, hierarchical, we've got a lineage that extends to God maybe. So these are all things which are put out there to make it more attractive. But the reality is that most of the styles which we learn in this time are very recent. So Taekwondo developed only in the 1950s. So someone from Korea will probably kick me in my face and tell them that, because they'll say no, it goes further than that. So there is an interesting history to it, which Japan was kind of an imperialist power in the 50s and earlier times, and they were kind of ruling parts most of Korea, and they controlled a lot of Korea. And so karate was a Japanese martial art which was being used or popularized and so on. So after the Japanese left Korea, they moved out of Korea, Taekwondo started developing. So there is a lot of there is an element of nationalistic pride also in the development of that particular style. So therefore, bringing that same element back here, so the African Americans, for them also, it's something like we want to learn a martial art. It is about black pride also. So we will pick up a style which doesn't have too much colonial history attached, colonial baggage attached to it. So Taekwondo was a nice choice in that sense. They also did. There are some elements of Bruce Lee system, Jeet Kune Do, which is also learned by this person, Matt Cutchin, but primarily Taekwondo. So just play some videos. Taekwondo, like any other martial art, you have different ways in which you practice it. One is called the katas or the forms. So those are solo forms of movement, where you don't spar with an opponent and so on. That is one. I'll show you a video of some katas. Then there is the application of the martial art in a street context. That is the second aspect. And third is martial sport as a sport. I'll just show you videos briefly of all three for Taekwondo, just to get a sense of what Taekwondo looks like. So these are the katas where you perform the different forms of movements as a solo practice. Each of them has applications in fights, but you also do it as a solo. No, it's okay. I can make the noises. So this is what a kata looks like in practice. So I'll show you a video where a person is kind of taking these katas and applying it to a fight for a street performance. Not performance, street defense. So this is one of the forms where he's showing the form, and he's showing the application, and then he'll show the form in its solo form, the solo version, as well as the application. Both are happening. This is the application, what he is doing right now. Yeah, so here he is doing the solo form as well as the application side by side, just to show you what he was using. For some reason, the solo form is being bare chested. I don't know why. Yeah. So that is street application of Taekwondo. You can use it in the street to defend yourself. The katas, how do you use it in the street? The third part is martial sport. Taekwondo is a martial sport. How do you use it? I mean, it's very popular as a sport nowadays. I'll just show you a glimpse of one of the interesting thing is at one point it was called World Taekwondo Federation, and they changed that. You know what I mean? WTF it was called. It was called that, now they changed it. Yeah, so this is a match, a typical Taekwondo match. Taekwondo is a martial sport. So, I mean, it looks a little boring if you watch it for too long. You might get. So there are points involved. If you hit different parts of the body, you get particular points, and the points are being counted on. So this is what Taekwondo looks as a sport. So we'll come back to the Black Panthers. The focus of the Black Panthers was twofold. One was to learn the martial art for self-development, for to learn particular skills and discipline and so on. So the martial arts aspect which I was talking about earlier applies here in this particular field. So they are applying it as a martial art. Uh, so here you can see Kachin, him teaching school children. They have community schools. So he's teaching school children, teaching the youth. Taekwondo is a form of discipline, a form of physical activity, as a form of exercise and so on and so forth. That is on the one side. This is school sessions. That is some demonstrations which they did for the larger public. So it went into their community school curriculum as well, Taekwondo. So it was not just about defending ourselves against police attacks, which also they did, but it's also to train oneself in martial arts, drawing from the definition of martial arts which I talked about earlier, as a comprehensive system if one learns, including the philosophy, including the morals, ethics, and so on. So that's that. They had, so this is a form which they kind of sent out to people who are interested to fill the form and join the classes. An article written in one of their newspapers about martial arts and the skills that can be developed through it. So that's what they did. Looking at it as a form of physical exercise, as a form of discipline, body discipline, to learn skills of fighting and so on. So it was a comprehensive program in that sense. And Taekwondo was the martial art primarily used, and elements of Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune also were there in this. So this is about Black Panther Party. You all can chip in at any point of time. It's not a lecture in that sense. You can ask questions, you can say things, say good things. So I'll shift gears and I'll move to my batteries group. No.
It's off, just turn it on now, I think. Press the. Yeah.
This is like the interval.
What is the Bruce Lee form?
Jeet Kune. So Jeet Kune is it's actually a martial art which I also learned. So Bruce Lee initially he learned a form of Kung Fu called Wing Chun Kung Fu for a couple of years, and then he competed in different fights. So there are a lot of legends and stories around it. One interesting story is that he was challenged in a fight by a Shaolin master in the US. So nobody knows what actually happened in that fight. There are three versions of it. One is he won comfortably, which his wife Linda Lee. The second version is that it was a draw. Third version is that the other person won, Wong Jackman, the challenger. In fact, movies have come out about this fight. So whatever happened in that fight, Bruce Lee realized the limitations of Wing Chun Kung Fu. Wing Chun Kung Fu is a style which very fight is very close distance. That was a problem because that guy had, the opponent had very long kicks and all that. He was not able to do that. So Bruce Lee, his realization from that fight was that his Wing Chun style is limited. Therefore what he started doing was he started incorporating elements from different styles. So for example, a lot of the punches are taken from boxing with some modifications. Kicks from Kung Fu, Karate, some grappling styles from Jiu-Jitsu and other things. So his philosophy was that you accept whatever works for you and just throw away what doesn't work to make it your fighting very effective. So that is Jeet Kune and it teaches that particular style. It's a very practical way of, and it has a philosophy also. Yeah.
Is it true Bruce Lee learned Cha-Cha to improve his football?
He was a Cha-Cha champion in college and all that. He was a dancer.
Oh.
Yeah. Dancing and martial arts was nice. He used to dance.
He
Used to dance. There are photos of him also dancing with a partner.
At the end of the session, Rohan is going to teach us 2-3 steps of some martial arts. So those who are interested, you can stay back.
Okay. So we'll. Yeah.
How much of the involvement of women or like girl children? Because I see that music for students. I mean, was it a rarity or was it like?
my understanding, there are girl students also who are learning in the community school thing. The Black Panther Party also had strong people, strong female personalities as well. But in the schools, it's a mixed thing. You can see in that photograph, there are girls also there. Yeah. So I'll move on to Mahatma Iyengar. So Iyengar, one of the most influential anti-caste Dalit activists from Kerala. He was born in 1863 in Kerala, in Trivandrum. He belonged to the Pulaya community, which is considered untouchable. So the thing with Iyengar was that he challenged the caste hierarchy in multiple ways. So one is in clothing itself, in dressing up. The Pulayas at that point of time were not allowed to wear anything except a very basic kind of clothing. They were not supposed to wear this more formal attire that you see over here. So he challenged that, he started wearing that kind of clothing. He wanted to educate a lot of the Dalit kids, so he wanted to send them to schools. But there is one instance where he took some children to a school and they started learning over there. The dominant caste people burnt down the school. So there was a lot of that tension happening in the backdrop. The British government, which was was the ruling party at that point of time, they had a bill in 1907 which allowed even Dalits to kind of participate in education. But of course, the dominant caste like the Nambudris, Nayars, and all that were obviously resisting. So his resistance was, as I said, multi-pronged. One is self-respect in terms of how you present yourself, challenging the caste norms and hierarchies and expectations. That is one part of it. At one point, when students were not allowed into school, so he came up with a strike also. No classrooms, no tilling. So a lot of the Dalits were agricultural laborers, landless laborers. So if they stop, if they strike, then the agricultural activity goes for a toss. So that was one thing which he did. He said, no, if you don't allow us kids into schools, we will stop tilling your land. That is one part. Clothing. The other thing is they were not allowed to ride bullock carts also. So he got onto a bullock cart and he actually rode it into dominant caste neighborhoods and all that. So there were multiple forms of resistance in that sense. The part which is relevant to what we're doing right now is martial arts. So Iyengar, he realized that a physical culture of martial arts training is also needed. Apart from all of these other strategies of resistance, you also need to train in a martial art. So here now we are going to focus on Kalaripayattu, which we can call a warrior art in the three categories that I talked about. So that's a traditional martial art from Kerala which has been there for centuries. Some people call it the oldest martial art in the world and all that drama, but we'll not go there. It is an old martial art. It has been practiced in Kerala for a long time, but it's been in the control of certain castes. So that is also clear. In the place where he was, that is in Trivandrum, the Nayars, who are a dominant caste in that region, were kind of the ones who learned martial arts and controlled it. They wouldn't allow anybody else to learn it. So he started learning it. He started teaching it to his to the younger generation. There, he set up Iyengar Pada, which is Iyengar army of youngsters. So there, the reason for teaching the martial art is one is for self-defense, the other is for physical purposes, and the other is also to a sense of dignity and self-respect in that sense. Learning a martial art which was not they didn't have access to up to that point of time. So the important part is looking at the reimagining the body of castes like the Pulayas, like Ayoti Das did in Tamil Nadu, to kind of give the Dalit body dignity, to remove markers which identify them in a particular way and so on, and to move away from that at a bodily level. That was also the intention. So just to give a context of what Kalaripayattu looks like, I've got a few videos like I did for Taekwondo. So I'll play you two videos of Kalaripayattu. One is stick fighting, the other is sword. And the third is I've got an excerpt from a movie which was on Srinarayana Guru, which had a character play Iyengar. So I'll show you that particular clip. There is a new movie coming out with Mammootty playing Iyengar, Kadiravan. I mean, the poster is out at least. So we'll wait for that. But in the meanwhile, I'll show you
What's the other movie called? The one you're going to
It's,
show us?
tell you the name. It's a movie on Srinarayana Guru. It's there, the name is there, but there is a role for Ayangali. I'll show you that. But before that, some so Kalaripayattu is stick fighting. So Kalaripayattu, just like many of the other martial arts, has unarmed combat and has armed combat. So armed combat, you have sticks, you have swords, you have spears, you have full range of weapons. This is the stick fighting aspect.
I have something to add here. So, in case somebody would like to watch that now, you can go to Kekkadi in Kerala, and there's a place where they do live shows every day.
Okay. Oh, nice. Bangalore also there are places where Kalari is taught.
Yeah.
Like Kekkadi is a popular evening show.
Oh, okay. That's nice. Yeah. In Tekadi. Oh. Yeah. So that is stick fighting. This is sword and shield. Okay. Then I play a clip from that movie. It's called Yuga Purushan. It's there on YouTube. So, but I just excerpted that one clip where Ayangali is shown. You can visualize the Yeah. So he plays Ayangali. This is Babu Anthony, he's a famous character actor in Kerala. He's actually a trained martial artist. Yeah, he knows martial arts. So, yeah. He lives in Bangalore also. In Indiranagar.
Here only, bro.
Can you tell us exact address?
No, one day I actually saw him in Indiranagar. That's what I'm saying. Riding past, I saw him there. I was like, oh. That's how I know.
We didn't think it's not.
Babu Anthony. Oh, correct.
The volume was down.
Yeah. So this is from a movie, upcoming movie, Mammootty. I mean, I wish they take a little younger actor, even though Ayangali himself lived till his 70s. Mammootty is not, he's a fine actor, wonderful actor, but he's not the most best mover in terms of fights and all that, even in his younger days.
He's acted as a Kalvi warrior. Sorry to say, he doesn't move fluently. Go back. But anyway, let's see how this movie pans out. Okay, so now I'll shift track to the suffrage movement in UK.
I
Yeah.
had a question. So, if you could tell us a little bit about the origins of Kalaripayattu, because I'm wondering, most of the performing arts have a history of appropriation, like Bharatanatyam, for example. Was there also appropriation? Because you are talking about reclamation from
Yeah.
Ayankali? Sorry, I'm terrible at pronouncing.
See, I don't know enough about the history of Kalvi. There are a lot of myths and a lot of legends
Right.
and all of that.
Yeah.
Kind of saying that it's a mother of all martial arts and Shaolin Kung Fu taking. I don't believe any of that. I do believe that a lot of these martial arts originated in isolation,
Right.
in requirement to the needs of a king of a zamindar and his army. So that is a local need. So I suspect Kalvi also evolved in that manner from a long time. But clearly there was a warrior class.
So
Now,
Nayars were the warrior class usually.
yeah. So the interesting thing is that not many people know that Nayars are from the Shudra caste, right? So a lot of people think that they are Kshatriyas, but there is no Kshatriya caste in Kerala. So they are the Shudra from the Shudra caste, and they climb the ladder over a particular point in time. So they had what is called as the Sambandham, which was illicit relationships with the Nambudiri, who were the Brahmins. And using that, they kind of also climbed the ladder in some ways. So the thing is also, Kalari also, even though Kerala is a small state, you have two styles of Kalari. One is the northern style and the other is the southern style. Now, who practices which style depends on the particularities of the region. Here we are talking about Trivandrum. So in Trivandrum, it was the Nayars and the who were controlling Kalari, and the Dalits had no access or entry. That's what I know. I mean, I don't know beyond that. But again, in the northern parts of Kerala, there is a caste called Tiyas. Who are in the southern, central and southern part, they are called the Iduvas. So they are also Shudra. But they also, in the northern part, Tiyas also practiced Kalari. In that sense, it was quite amorphous. It was not the Nambudris doing it for sure.
Right, yeah.
For sure. They are the ones who felt one killing somebody.
Yeah. And a side note, if anybody is interested in learning Kalari, I go to classes. We can talk after.
Maybe sitting in the show something.
No.
I'll outsource it. Okay. So, is that fine?
Where did Ayengani learn Kalari from?
I'm not entirely sure. I did a lot of research for this thing, but there is very little information available on all of that. But he picked it up, so I don't know how he picked it up. It's a good question. It's a good thing to research also, to find out, because I'm not sure. But he did learn it. How he learned it, where he learned it from, good question. Maybe there was some Kalari master who was sympathetic towards him or something. I don't know. You need to find it.
I'm curious about that.
Yeah.
Is that martial arts developed before the gunpowder age?
Yeah.
Right? So most of these traditional martial arts you said in the government in like so are you saying that
Sorry, can you talk a little louder?
right, so
No. I'm not saying that martial arts developed in the last 20 years.
I'm curious
Yeah.
about this.
Yeah.
So all these traditional martial arts, have they changed like since the 20 years?
Exactly. So that is the point I'm trying to make. The martial arts may be old, but the styles which we are learning right now, whether it's karate, whether it's kung fu, whether it is Kalari, they've all been modified over time. So martial arts also evolved over time. See, the thing is, if you look at Kalari, historically it's a warrior art form, and it's only taught to the warriors. Now it's opened up to everyone. So you have to modify it a little bit because you're changing who you're teaching it. So a lot of things are dropped. There is one example of a person in Kerala who went to Malaysia and kind of modified Kalari quite a bit and dropped off a lot of aspects, focused only on the self-defense aspect of it. So Chinese martial arts, Wing Chun Kung Fu for example, there is a story that it is about 600 years old, but actual historical research shows that it's hardly about 50 to 100 years old, or little more than that. So what I'm saying is that they may be old in their traditional form, but the way we are learning now has changed with the changing times.
You think it have organically or do you think it happened with people exchanging?
No, it could have happened. See, organically in a way because who are you teaching it to? That has changed. The other is exchanging notes definitely would have happened over time. Like, influences from other styles pick up and then your styles are picked up from by somebody else.
So when you say it evolved, what really changed? Did it go from fighting wars to close combat or
See,
more sport?
one thing which is primarily changed is the amount of time and effort that you spend on martial arts. That is changed. Like for example, if you have to learn a traditional martial art, in earlier times you have to spend some 15-20 years of learning. Nowadays we don't have the time for that. So what the martial artist teachers do is they fine tune it for the modern needs of our urban needs. We are not going to spend 15-16 years in Bangalore. Some people might do it. I'm saying the general person who's interested in it won't. So then you have to kind of dilute it a little bit, right? That's the trend across. In fact, if you have to learn, say, Kalari, person is learning Kalari that. So I think for the first 6 months or 1 year, you only learn exercises, stretching and all of that. You don't even learn any combat. Only then you start going
At least 6 months is mostly.
So that 6 months in earlier times would have been 4 years, 5 years. Conditioning your body first. Then you pick up the weapons. You start fighting. So now it's 6 months. Earlier it could have been much more. And the 6 months is how many times a week do you go?
Twice.
That's what it is. But earlier it would have been people doing this every day for hours.
Also, is there a resource where we could find more about this historical perspective of Kalari? Because I mean, it's again, like you said, there's so much myth and this whole 600 years and all of that.
600 or
So
6,000?
Yeah. So I sort of want to learn more about the history of it. So
See, I got one book which is a very rich ethnographic study of Kalari fighters. It's by this one British person who was a theatre person. He came to Kerala to learn Kathakali. From Kathakali, he wanted to pick up some cues for his theatre book. Through that, he got interested in Kalari because Kathakali performers also learn some Kalari moves. Then he dove deep into Kalari, spent many years learning it in Kerala. He's written a very rich ethnographic book on Kalari. I'll give you the details.
Sure.
So that is one resource I can think of. Okay. So now we move to the suffrage movement, late part of the 19th century, early part of the 20th century. So at that point of time in the US and in Europe, there was a lot of push for women's voting rights, which they didn't have. So here we are focusing on UK more than US. So what happened at that point of time is the British suffrage movement started in the early part of the 20th century. And the women started organizing themselves, started demanding for rights to vote. And doing a lot of, like you can see in the photograph, protests, rallies, and a lot of public, putting pressure on the authorities publicly. So that started happening. Now, Jiu-Jitsu is a Japanese martial art, which is basically primarily interested in, there are not too much strikes or punches, kicks in Jiu-Jitsu. It's largely about locks and holds and throws. Someone comes and holds your hand, and how do you get out of it when you throw people down. That has morphed into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu also, BJJ, which is very popular now. But Jiu-Jitsu, the Japanese form, is a lot about locks and throws and holds. So if anyone holds you, how do you get out of that? So now in this case, we are focusing on this person, Edith Carrot, her photo is here. So she started learning Jiu-Jitsu and also parallelly getting involved with the suffrage movement. Both of these things started happening parallelly. She learned under this Japanese person in Soho, in London. So after that, initial stages she started kind of demonstrating Jiu-Jitsu as a martial art and how it works for women. The interesting aspect of it is also, apart from the suffrage movement, it was also, she started doing demonstrations like this. So you can see this person in the police uniform is somebody dressed up as a policeman, not an actual policeman. It was for a demonstration purpose. So she started doing demonstrations of it, trying to make it popular. And one of the main reasons was this. domestic violence, to counter domestic violence. Jiu-Jitsu as a husband tamer. So that was also one of the initial kind of motivations to learn it. If your husband will teach you, don't just go on the ground like this. So I teach you skills to do that, is the thing. Is how it started off. So she went around, after she learned it, she went around demonstrating it, teaching it to women and so on. Parallelly, as I said, she also got involved in the suffrage movement. The role in the suffrage movement was, they set up this thing called the bodyguard unit. So when they were doing these protests and rallies and all outside, the cops would come and assault them, even the women. That is something which they wanted to protect themselves. So the third category, which is the close combat one, which I talked about earlier, is what we are going to apply over here. So the intention of learning Jiu-Jitsu is purely for self-defense from close combat range. And they started using that they set up this bodyguard unit where women in the suffrage movement were specifically taught they were to protect the others from police violence and all that. So they use it in the street a few times, successfully, sometimes unsuccessfully. So I've picked up a couple of interesting videos on YouTube. It's not connected to the suffrage movement, but it's from the late 1920s and 30s of women doing demonstration of Jiu-Jitsu. I'll just show you the video. Again, it's not connected to this movement, but just to give a sense of how Jiu-Jitsu was popular at that point in time among people. This is silent, so there's no. From 29, I don't know.
1929.
29. 1920. That's not easy. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so this is like a promotional video. So, like I said earlier, it's largely about holds and throws and all of that. Not much striking. Okay. So this is there on YouTube. I'll play one more video which has instructions also. Man and a woman kind of talking about Jesus. This is 1931. some videos which are available which talk about jiu-jitsu and how it was popular at one point among the women in UK. So what happened to the suffrage movement was when the First World War happened, it kind of subsided because of the war. And after the war, there were some concessions given. Like for example, women above the age of 30 were allowed to vote. And then over time, it changed. And finally, women got the right to vote, and the suffrage movement had achieved its aims. And so jiu-jitsu continued, but not necessarily in the movement. So yeah, that's that.
You were saying that jiu-jitsu is basically used as a defense
Yeah.
As
Close combat, yeah.
So is it true that like other martial arts also are not necessarily for going offensive for attacks, but they are mostly for defense?
Yeah.
The discipline, except for maybe a few of them.
See, if you're a proper martial artist and you're trained in that in any martial art for a long time, if you're in a position of conflict, fight, your first instinct is to avoid. It's not to go for the fight. It's only when someone attacks you and you have no choice but to defend yourself, you will go ahead. There are some exceptions to that. For example, Krav Maga, I went for one class of Krav Maga and I ran away from that. So yeah, there are exceptions. Krav Maga is very aggressive and very violent, and it is strike first. So yeah, that's the thing. So ideally, you wouldn't want to start a fight. But if someone starts a fight, you need to respond and protect yourself. That's how it should be, ideally. So I'm done. That's it. Covered all the three movements, three martial arts, three interpretations of it. If you have anything to share, you can share. Any questions? Any thoughts? Yeah.
I'd be interested to know what you. This is mostly historical.
Yeah.
So in the present, what do you see as a? What is the link between the past and today, or like, and into the future? What would you see as why should we learn martial forms today, and how you see it as a continued movement?
You're saying why we should, as in anybody, or you're talking about social movements specifically, the linkage, or just anybody?
Social movements particularly, because that has been also the theme.
So social movements in India right now, so this topic itself, I don't know, if the government comes to know that I'm doing a topic like this, it might be contentious. We're training people to revolt against the state. But I would say, if you ask me, I think it's very important to have some skills to protect yourself. If you're in position, if there are goons attacking you, suppose you go out in a rally, peaceful rally, some crazy goons start attacking you, you should be able to at least defend yourself. I feel that is very important at that very basic level. But beyond that also, I feel martial arts, if you want to learn it as a martial art form, see, if you're in the social sector, if you're an activist and all of that, there is a lot of stress, there's a lot of tension, there is a lot of stress that you have to deal with at a psychological level, at a physical level. I feel martial arts can also help there, apart from just the combat defense aspect. But as a discipline which will help you to kind of center yourself, to train your body, train your mind, and so on, to kind of make you more calm and more relaxed. It can help in that way also, I feel. So I haven't done any study of any contemporary movements and all of that. It's all historical, like you said.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it's probably happening. I don't know. I need to find out.
Yeah, it is happening. Sure. Thank you.
So contemporary you were saying, right? So these kind of classes happen in Chennai with Silambam. It's a widely popular sport. I mean, like on the roads you will see like little kids in their their Silambam classes uniforms and roaming around with sticks and all of that. And small ones, little ones. And they have these classes everywhere in parks and public areas and all of that. And even part of street festivals, temple festivals and all of that. There will be performances on the streets. So they'll have kids doing like with the sticks and one-on-one combat, like which are practiced choreographed moves. But those are there. And in some areas, like in some of the slums in North Chennai, there is like this couple who runs like it's like a school, community school for all the kids, where they get everybody and make them sit in one place and say, okay, you have to do the homework now. But it's also combined with other things like language classes, cultural stuff, and Silambam. So and those kids are really good. So they don't just do the sticks. They also have these, I don't know what you call them. Uh, they are like circular things which are lit up with pockets of fire, and they pass it around like back and forth, and they are very well choreographed moves. So yeah, I mean, if somebody makes a mistake, it's likely to cause injury. So
yeah. So this is what Silambam looks like. Lambatam, this is solo, but yeah. It's possible. So there is something about sari also, but I mean, it's good. She's promoting handloom sarees also. Yeah, so this one is probably a modification of what you're talking about. If you're not careful with this, you can chop yourself to pieces. It's a steel belt. Yeah. So that's great. Is there anything written about it? Is there anything you can...
I haven't found anything,
Okay.
or I didn't look also, but this is something that I've seen when I was living in Chennai.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they have competitions and all that, and a lot of the, I think it is taught in some schools also.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And a lot of the kids are girls.
Ah,
So,
nice.
like it's everybody, like I think up until teenage you will see people practicing, but after that, like
Yeah.
I mean they fall off the habit or practice or whatever.
So Silvatam, there's a strong culture in Tamil Nadu. They take their competition also very seriously. There are clubs and all of that who compete with each other.
Oh,
It's quite a thing, especially the smaller towns, rural areas and all that. But yeah, this is a great thing. What you're saying, the teaching, especially children who belong to probably poorer sections of society.
Yeah. So here my colleague Shivani has a point to make. She said RSS.
Social movement and class, I purposely avoided that. they also practice. They practice stick fighting.
Yeah.
They do. But they do also some very hilarious stuff. One can see that. No, they do practice. They do practice side the film. They have stick fighting as their curriculum. But I'm not interested in RSS studies.
What kind of stick fighting?
I mean, like Silambatam, a North Indian version of it. Lathi.
No, but the point you made about the martial arts having like this ethical and like philosophical feel was, I had also not thought about that link.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think even here, if we're talking about working with youth, etc., like generally we speak of a lot of like spoken English classes, this, that, etc. But I guess at least I had not thought of like martial arts as something that is, because it's also tied quite closely to self-respect and like dignity. I didn't know about the Ankali movement link also. I think it was like really interesting. I had no idea that all these movements had this martial arts.
Lawrence told me about how karate is very popular among a particular segment of Tamil youth in Bangalore, belonging to poorer section. So I asked him if he's got any study on it, but he said that karate is like it plays that role in Bangalore among the Tamil youth.
I think even boxing, I think the show.
Boxing, yeah,
Saatwate
absolutely.
Parampara.
Saatwate
Parampara,
yeah.
Brilliant strategy.
Yeah.
I had a friend who was making a reality show in Bombay, and they were working with slums in Bombay.
Right.
They realized a lot of kids from the slum who get into a lot of trouble end up going to MMA gyms to kind of like release the anger they have, but also then that becomes a way of earning money for the family.
Right.
They're really good, and a lot of women as well actually.
Right.
Very poor families, and their husbands support them in doing this, and then they become
become soul bread, by doing the activity.
Yeah.
So way
Can
of life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I on Fridays I go to this one school, Annaswamy Mudalaya school in Fraser Town. I do some, not martial arts, some fitness stuff, sports and all that. So I'm slowly thinking of introducing martial arts there, but I have to be really careful because when they're playing sports itself, I see a lot of. So how do I channel that aggression so that it's not about fight? So they watch movies, they watch maybe see fights happening and all of that, and for them it's everything. You need to finish it with the fist, especially the boys. That can be channeled, but one has to do it really carefully, in a sensitive way. But yeah, give it some more time, slowly bring it in. Because it shouldn't be that, you learn some skills and then you use it in a brawl with your, friends here.
Siblings.
Siblings especially.
I had a question just to provoke everybody's thoughts. Like, this government sort of made yoga as the national symbol, cultural symbol in terms of physical activity.
International Yoga Day.
Yeah, I was thinking if this was a country that was led by somebody like I am, somebody came from the oppressed section of the society, would that have looked different? Like, what would have been their choice of sport or activity to promote India's soft power? Do you think it would have been?
I mean, yeah, I guess it could have been different. See, yoga also it has some very dodgy history because after the mid of the 19th century, yoga was not being done by the elites. Actually, a lot of the street performers and the gymnasts and all were doing all these gymnastics and poses and all that. That was looked down upon by the dominant classes, castes and all. It's only when the